Welcome to Couch Quarterbacks.
Hey guys, welcome to the third episode of the Couch Quarterbacks, our second episode in the official NFL offseason. So, no games to recap, no scoring, no predictions, but we do got a great show for you. We got NFC report cards. We talked about that last week, how we were going to get into that. Also, kind of some headlines, and it's kind of going to be a shorter show today, but still all the great content that we're promising you guys. Once again, I'm Ben. Joined with me, as always, is Andrew.
What is going on, everybody? And happy, well, I was going to say happy
holidays.
Friday, but
President's Day was Monday, right?
Yeah, we had a nice string in a row of holidays with
Valentine's Day, President's Day. Walgreens today had Easter going up in the Easter section.
They're always like a month. They're always a month
Wednesday
in advance,
and Fat Tuesday. Wow, we had
March. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was like a whole string in a row that of all sorts of
That's
holidays.
I like that.
Why do we not just have this whole week off from school and work?
There's always a holiday every day on if you look up History Channel.
Well, yeah, yesterday was National Wine Day, something.
Really?
Yeah, everyone was posting about it on Instagram.
I did not see. Maybe I don't partake as much, but let's get into football. Let's stop talking about holidays, because with football, every Sunday is a holiday for us.
Yes, you are right, Stein. Let's get into our opening segment, which is the opening kickoff. And probably the biggest news from this past week was going to be Carson Wentz is now an Indianapolis Colt.
And just right off the bat, I'm going to say that all the edits of him in the Indianapolis blue, they all look really stupid. I mean, I don't know if you saw those on Twitter.
I saw them. Really, the blue wasn't the problem for me. It was that it just looked like his shoulder pads were way too high up on his body.
And he combined the red hair with the eye black. It looks like
he looked like a 1970s football player where they had the shoulder pads that are just sticking out like this on you.
Or he looks like a really terrible a really terrible 80s rom-com, high school movie, and he's the douchebag quarterback, boyfriend of the hot girl,
he's the starting quarterback on the high school football team.
Yeah, in Texas or something, pre-Friday Night Lights. But the edits were funny, but we see what I would say is the first move on the quarterback carousel of this crazy COVID quarterback year, and that is Carson Wentz, who we both knew and everyone knew was very upset with his situation in Philly, which, begs the question. A lot of people were saying that Philly got rid of Doug Peterson because, they wanted to make Wentz happy. But then they just ship him off, so...
Yeah, so it's a question of, really, Wentz gets to go to a team that made the playoffs last season, and then... Philly,
that's going to be doing, I think, rent a quarterback. Rent a quarterback every year.
They rented Phil Rivers last season. They'll have Carson Wentz. Well, Carson Wentz still has 4 years left on his deal, so...
Poor Jacoby Brissette. That guy's just never going to see the... He's not a bad quarterback. He's
never going to get a starting job anywhere.
He's not as good enough to be the starter, but he'll just be marinating, and he won't have to do his signature third down look.
That's what I was telling one of my buddies. I was like, well, he's not going to be coming in on Hail Marys or QB sneaks anymore. They'll actually leave Carson Wentz.
Wait, it is Carson Wentz. We forget about that. A guy with notorious injury bug. So Jacoby Brissette, fantasy target.
He could see some playing time. Well, that's what
waiver wire pickup week 3. Just gonna put that out there.
So the Colts end up giving up a 2021 third round pick in this year's draft, and then 2022 conditional second round pick.
And that conditional is a very weird conditional.
Yeah, so it could turn into a first round pick, and it goes into kind of the injuries you're talking about with Wentz. If he plays 75% of the snaps next season, or 70% of the snaps, and the team makes the playoffs. So,
what kind of conditional? What kind of conditional is this?
It's basically if he ends up staying healthy next season, that the Eagles will end up getting a first round pick in 2022 instead of a second round pick.
It's like me negotiating when I was little, trying to stay up later with my parents. It's like, if I finish half of my homework now, I can.
If I eat my vegetables at dinner, will I get an extra 15 minutes of watching TV or playing video games before I go to sleep?
That's what it is. But I mean, I think honestly, this is one of the first I feel like there's a lot of conditionals and a lot of trades that we just don't get talked about. But the fact that this is Wentz, this is a guy who has injury issues. Like, this is the one time, like, the conditionals actually, like, advertised. And do you think that, like, Roach, I'm just going to ask you, do you think they satisfy any of these conditions?
I think that they will. I think he'll be the starter next season. I would say that he'll stay healthy. He's got a much better offensive line with the Colts than he did with the Eagles.
Yeah.
As many of you know, we talked about it last week also, that he was the most sacked quarterback in the league last season. The Colts have spent a lot of money, a lot of draft capital on their offensive line, so I think he'll be much better protected. It's going to be his starting job, I would assume, going into next season. So I think he starts, he stays healthy. The Eagles will end up getting a first-round pick out of it. And I think this is really a win-win for both teams. The Colts end up getting their quarterback to try and get them back into the playoffs. Definitely a step up from Phil Rivers, with Phil Rivers at the end of his career. And then the Eagles able to get a couple of draft picks. They now have freedom to kind of do what they want with the 6th pick that they have this upcoming season, whether they want to get one of these stud quarterbacks or they want to get a wide receiver to help out Jalen Hurts. But it gives them a lot of different directions that they could go into.
Yeah, it gives I really don't want to see what the Eagles are doing, what the Cardinals did, what Dolphins are looking like they're going to do, and what the Eagles could potentially do. And that's saying that they draft this quarterback, the Cardinals drafting Rosen, the Dolphins drafting Tua, and then, what if the Eagles draft another quarterback? And because I really like Hurts, I don't want to see Hurts, become one of those quarterbacks that they drafted a year before and they're like, oh, nope, we want the better quarterback.
Well, that's what he played okay in the 4 games that he started at the end of the season last year. Only a 52% completion percentage, which is really what a lot of people are harping on in terms of something he needs to improve on, but also what kind of receivers do they have there in Philly.
Exactly.
The big damage he did was with his legs, 354 yards rushing, almost 6 yards on average per carry, and also had 3 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah.
So,
and it's a complete regime change in Philly, so maybe the fact they got a new coach, kind of new pieces can really kind of cater the offense to around his strengths, whereas Hurts was kind of running that Wentz, Doug Peterson offense that they had. That had success, but now the keys are turned over to new folks.
Yeah, that's what. Without getting into the Eagles too much, because we'll get into them later with the NFC East report card. I do think that they should go into a full rebuild, honestly.
Yeah, and I their division's not very competitive right now, so it just gives them time to they're not going to be fighting.
It could be a quicker rebuild than other teams would have for a full rebuild, just because of the competition they have in their division.
Yeah.
But
let's go to the Colts side, where we see that Carson Wentz actually goes back to the guy that was really the curator of his success, and that's Frank Reich, the head coach of the Colts. Wentz back with Reich just makes sense,
that was the OC with Philly back in 2017 when he was a Pro Bowler, had that MVP type season before he got hurt in the playoffs. So, like I said, I think this is a good move for the Colts. They were already a playoff caliber team. I thought it would have been dumb for them to go after one of these rookies in the draft when they had such a good team. It made more sense for them to go after a veteran, a guy that had proven that he's done well in the league before. And being able to reunite with a guy that he's had success with, I think that's a win for them, even with taking on the money that they're going to have to take on with Wentz's huge contract.
Yeah. Now, I don't think Wentz, honestly, I know you said he's an improvement from Rivers, but honestly, I don't really see it that way. I see Wentz as a guy who still is improving parts of his game. There's still a lot that he doesn't do well. And, I mean, last year was just a huge, just terrible, like, dark mark on his career. And, he kind of lost his mojo. And I think it's going to take maybe a season to really get that mojo back. Because it's not going to, there's no magic wand that he's going to come out and be MVP caliber.
I'm not saying he's going to be an MVP type just right off the bat again. I was saying I think he'll be probably a back-end QB1 in terms of fantasy. So that's anywhere from like a QB9 to QB12 type of range. Phillip Rivers was a QB15 last year for the Colts in terms of fantasy. So really? I think, like I said, with the Eagles this past season, he had the terrible offensive line. He got sacked so much. No receivers once again with that team.
Oh, and he also had the Philly media breathing down his neck.
Yeah, so every game he had to prove.
I kind of feel like the Indianapolis media, I feel like people in Indianapolis are a little bit more chill with their quarterback, and they've had some great quarterbacks, and guys that
a guy maybe named Peyton Manning.
Yeah, and then Andrew Luck, of course, and they've never been getting on their quarterback for. I feel like it's a city that doesn't get on their quarterback for doing bad.
Yeah, that's what, like I said, with an improved offensive line, you have receivers is kind of a question mark, so that could really be a downfall for Carson Wentz. But you have a nice up and coming running back in Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah,
a great defense, much better than the Eagles' defense.
Led by D. Leonard. So I mean, you kind of said it. This receiving core. I mean, Michael Pittman is decent, but you're Ty is going to be a free agent. And they probably will resign him just because he's
The Colts do have a lot of money this offseason. There are a couple of big name wide receivers which we'll get into, but could be an option that they could go down trying to sign one of these receivers.
Yeah.
So I just think he really needed a change of scenery, and I think out of all the places that he could have ended up going to, it's much better that he's going to the Colts compared to the Bears, which is rumored where he was going to about a week or two ago.
That could have been rough. I remember we talked about that last week. Just being back with Frank Reich just kind of is like night and day. What he could have had, and another quick point. The fact that the Colts do take him. That means they're kind of out of the market for a quarterback. This is the first stop on the quarterback carousel, or the quarterback musical chairs, we should call it. This is the first seat taken. So that means that Matt Ryan, there were some rumors about Matt Ryan potentially being an interest of the Colts. Those rumors are put to bed. So
yeah, so with Wentz being there, Matt Ryan, if he does end up getting traded, will go to another team. But overall, I think it's a pretty even trade for both sides. They both got what they needed. A rebuilding Philly team gets draft picks. The Colts able to get an experienced quarterback, and we'll see just how good Carson Wentz is in Indianapolis. But Let's move on to our other segment in this opening kickoff, and that is going to be the cap minimum was finalized yesterday, Stein, at $180 million. So for reference, it was $175 million last season. They were expecting it to be closer to about $160 million for this upcoming season, just from all the losses in revenue from having the limited fan base and just everything going on with COVID. So $180 million is a nice plus for the minimum. They haven't announced a cap ceiling yet. They're waiting to tally up all the numbers from this past season. So right around when the new season starts in about 3 weeks or so, I think it is, that's when we'll have a cap ceiling. But at least we have a cap floor now finalized. And some of the teams that could benefit from this cap floor, you have the Jaguars that have the most cap space. They're going to have the number one pick in the draft, get Trevor Lawrence. So be able to get him some weapons, some help pretty much everywhere on that team. We mentioned the Colts having a lot of cap space. The Jets, Patriots, and Washington are the teams projected to have some of the most cap space this offseason. And some of the teams that are going to be in cap hell this offseason, the Falcons have the 6th worst cap odds, even with releasing a couple of guys yesterday. And then you have the Chiefs, Rams, Steelers, Eagles, and we all know about the Saints with around $70 million in the red.
Yeah, I mean, the Saints it's kind of like a big drop-off between the Eagles and the Saints. And, both of them, as a Falcons fan, we thought the cap situation was pretty bad, but there's 5 teams that have it worse, in terms of cap situation. Granted, 3 of those teams were playoff, or 4 of those teams, were playoff teams.
Yeah, the Eagles being the only other team that wasn't.
Yeah, Eagles being the one team that was not.
And the team right above the Falcons was the Packers, so another team that made it to the NFC title game.
Yeah, so these big spenders, really seeing the dividends of their big spending. It's an interesting idea, because the Falcons and the Eagles, both spending all that money, and the Eagles far and away, doubling what the Falcons owe, both not making the playoffs. It's just kind of, goes to show what injuries can do to a team, and what, poor performance and coaching can do to a team.
Yeah, and that's what we mentioned, the Falcons making a couple cuts yesterday. Ricardo Allen, Allen Bailey, and then they ended up waiving Kurt Benkert. I always get the E and the U confused in his first name and last name, so it's either Kent Bunkert or Kurt Benkert.
Benkert. Yeah, a guy that really has just been on their practice squad. I think maybe he's been in a couple preseason games, but wasn't the backup quarterback of the future. Obviously, wasn't the starter of the future. But that kind of opens the door for the Falcons to either sign a veteran backup quarterback, trade for a veteran backup quarterback or draft a new backup or draft a guy that they're going to groom to make into the starter, which I think is what they're ultimately going to do. Sad to see Ricardo Allen go, a 6-year starter, a guy, who was really kind of the captain of the defense, but it saves money. You got to get faster and you got to get younger and you got to get some, the Falcons, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the different results. Well, the Falcons need to change and, a new regime with Terry and Arthur coming in, really they're gonna trim some of the fat. And I love Rico, but he was part of the old guard. Alan Bailey just really not. I mean, kind of part on that rotational defensive line. Really, didn't do much. So
yeah, that's what the Falcons ended up saving, about $10 million on the cap. So even with the $10 million saved, they're still $20 million under, according to this over the cap page that we've been looking at.
With the Falcons only having one quarterback on their depth chart right now, opens the door for obviously there's gonna be 2 or 3 quarterbacks added, somehow, some way, and there's also only one safety on the depth chart. Well, one starting caliber safety right now, and that is Keanu Neal. But Keanu is a free agent, so once free agency hits, people are expecting that Keanu will be back in Atlanta. But he's probably one of the only Falcons free agents they are expecting to retain.
I was going to say, if the Falcons end up using their franchise tag this offseason, I would expect it to be on Keanu Neal.
A guy who I like, but has just hasn't been able to stay healthy. It's the assumption is that they'll probably draft a safety or just figure out a way, because there's going to be somebody new playing that free safety position.
Yeah, and pretty much segueing from our opening kickoff into our NFC report card, the first team that we got in there, we're going to talk about the NFC South first. We're already talking about the Falcons. Let's just keep talking about the home team, the Atlanta Falcons. And you mentioned Stein, 4-12 this past season, last in the division. Just very rough on defense. All the blown leads during the season. This is a team that really could have been probably 8-8 on the season, just about a 500 team, but just couldn't hang on to leads that they had 3 or 4 times, just big leads blown.
It's probably good that their final record was as bad as it was, because if it was 9-7, then a lot of the flaws that this team has wouldn't be exposed as much. Even if we win all those close games, they were still close for a reason. There was still some kind of mistake or errors, on this team that need to be corrected. So this is our NFC report card. Basically, we're going to both play teacher, and we're going to grade every single team in the NFC by division and give them a definitive grade on their performance from the season. We're going to try not to be biased or strict.
This is a final grade.
We're going to try to be not to be biased.
Grade.
But we're going to try to be strict, I should say. So for the Falcons, we gave them a C-, and C- is not they weren't terrible. They had a lot of highlights. And Calvin Ridley was probably their biggest highlight on offense. He really kind of took that step up. I would say even the step that he's probably going to be in the future, the wide receiver 1.
Well, that's what everyone was questioning, whether or not he had the ability to be the wide receiver 1 once Julio, with being up there in age, once he was going to retire, go to a different team, started to lose it a little bit. And we saw with the injuries this past season to Julio that Ridley really had a chance to show whether or not he was going to be a wide receiver 1. And in those games, he really did show that he can be that guy.
Yeah.
For this team.
Todd Gurley was a rental. We talked about him last week. 9 touchdowns. That's fine. We'll get another running back.
They'll be in the
there's
market
going to be
a
running back, and there's going to be a running back who's going to get touches. Russell Gage, I thought, had a decent year. Played better. Kind of took over that wide receiver 3 position. So he was another kind of highlight guy. Hurst, and I would say another kind of rental.
He's very, very up and down type season for Hurst.
Yeah. So also between the report cards, we said C-. We're also going to give an MVP and an LVP. MVP, obviously, most valuable player. LVP.
Wait, really?
Least valuable player. So, when I say player, it could just be a position group or just even a situation as a whole. So for the Falcons, I said the MVP was Calvin Ridley this year. I mean, you could make the argument Matt, but there was times where Matt really, especially that back-breaking interception
Yeah, I'd give it to Ridley just with the type of season that he had. And then the LVP you got down here, Kendall Sheffield, Isaiah Oliver.
That cornerback 2 spot.
I was going to say, you could really give it to just about the whole Falcons defense.
Yeah, I was trying to do a specific player, but, I mean, A.J. Tyrell had rookie struggles, but he also was, I mean, every single rookie cornerback wasn't good. There wasn't, like, a single, like, guy who really was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Terrell was decent. I mean, he wasn't amazing. He wasn't anything special, but he also wasn't terrible. But Kendall Sheffield and Isaiah Oliver just both were kind of switching places at that cornerback too. Both of them just would get exposed. I even remember in the Panthers game, I was there. I actually was wearing my knee brace during that game, and I was like, I could be covering the receiver. I could be covering Robbie Anderson better than these guys because they were getting burnt.
So that's what we alluded to it a little bit, but on draft night, the Falcons have the number 4 pick.
Yep.
One quarterback right now under contract. They need a lot of help on defense as well.
Positions.
So do the Falcons end up going quarterback with that number 4 pick? Do they go with a different position with a 4 pick, or do they try and trade back and get some more picks so they can get some more quality guys on there?
I mean, it's a hard decision because it's like you could go for that number 4 and get a guy like Fields. You could,
You could trade back to the end of the first round, get a guy like Mac Jones.
Get an extra second round.
You could get an edge rusher and end up getting a guy in the secondary with your own second round pick. You're gonna need a running back as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of needs the Falcons have.
They have a lot of picks, so the more draft capital they get would be great. So
in my opinion, I'd rather the Falcons move back, get a couple more picks, just because they have so many positional needs.
Exactly.
But
I do not envy Terry Fontenot.
Yeah,
I do. I'm sorry.
How about for a new head coach, a new GM, your first thing is to try and fix this organization. A lot of times when you have a new head coach, a new GM, that's kind of a bad situation that they end up going into. But the easiest way to please these Falcons fans is to end up doing the right things in the draft, and it's going to be some tough decisions for them on what they want to do on draft night, whether keeping that pick or who they want to take with that pick, or if they end up wanting to trade back just to get some more players.
Yeah. So next is the Panthers. I gave them a C+. They finished 5-11 on the season, 3rd in the Nfc South. I kind of define them as making the best of a bad opportunity. They kind of were coming in the season with little expectations, and
then your star running back ends up getting hurt in like the second or third week of the season. Chris McCaffrey ends up only playing 3-4 games on the season.
Yeah, they're definitely on the. They're definitely going in a better direction under Matt Rule. Even though Ron Rivera was a great coach for them, they just needed to change, and Rule is looking like a guy who's going to be putting them in a situation in the coming years, not next year, and certainly not last year, but just making the best of a bad opportunity. Their MVP, I would say, would be Matt Rule as a whole. Just the way he was able to come in and make the team better than a lot of people thought. Because I mean, this is a team that could easily have gone, one win or 2 wins, and 5 wins is better.
Yeah, I mean, think about at the beginning of the season. If you say that Chris McCaffrey played in 4 games, let's say, and the Panthers finished with 5 wins, that's what I remember. They started out 0-2 with McCaffrey, and then they ended up winning 2 or 3 games in a row once McCaffrey got injured. Mike Davis had all those blow-up games as the running back one, so it was like, do they really need Christian McCaffrey? Obviously, as a joke. But just to be able to get the 5 wins with McCaffrey playing very limited this past season.
Yeah, and their defensive line was starting to look a little bit better. Derek Brown and Brian Burns both kind of starting to cement themselves in that regard. But the I would say the LVP for them would be the Christian McCaffrey injury. That's just your best player getting injured.
And that's what you put like Christian McCaffrey injured on there, and then I changed it to CMC ankle as the LVP with the ankle not being able to hold up for him.
Yeah, his ankle is the least valuable.
Just that one body part. That's the least valuable player for the Panthers this season.
The biggest offseason question is Teddy Two Gloves going to be the quarterback going forward? With rumors that came up this week of Deshaun Watson getting traded. to the Panthers.
Yeah, there was a chance of them. It said CMC and some picks over to the Texans for Deshaun, and I would just feel so bad for McCaffrey if he had to go to Houston. It's like he's already set up in a bad situation in Carolina, and then just go to Houston. You're pretty much the only player there that's just a dumpster fire right now. So
yeah.
I'm sure he would hope that wouldn't happen. But yeah, Teddy was okay. Big offseason signing for them, 3 year, $63 million deal. He played okay. He had his ups and downs this past season. They had the 8 pick in the draft. A lot of people are projecting them to get Justin Fields if he's still on the board there, or really another quarterback.
Yeah.
Whoever's going to be on the board when they have that 8 pick.
Probably try to trade up if they can. If some of these quarterbacks are going quickly.
That's what they do need some help back in the secondary linebacking core for that Carolina team. So they have some other team needs, but I just don't think Teddy's the answer for them, even with having to pay.
Teddy's not going to win them a Super Bowl, but he's going to be a starter they can put it out next year to get to have these other guys around him get experience.
I could very much see them drafting a quarterback, and then it's that type of situation where Teddy starts the first 3 or 4 games of the season, and then he ends up getting benched one game, and whatever rookie they draft comes in and then doesn't lose his starting job the rest of the season.
Yeah, and then Teddy's just a journeyman, which he has been. But
talking about now Teddy's former team in the New Orleans Saints, they were 12-4 this past season, had the 2 seed, won the division, but end up losing to the Buccaneers in the divisional round.
I gave them an A- because they had a great regular season, but I would say this is kind of this is the whole team report card, not just regular season. Mm-hmm. And so the A-, just expectations in the playoffs, and just
I mean, you can talk about it. It's been the same song and dance the past 3 seasons for the Saints, with just having the great regular season and then end up losing in the playoffs. The MVP, Alvin Kamara.
Alvin Kamara. Let's just talk about a 6 touchdown performance
on Christmas against the Vikings. Yeah. Just a stud running back one for this team, one of the best running backs in the league. There's I know you're not the biggest fan of Kamara, but you can't hate what he does on the football field.
No, and a 6 touchdown
unless he's playing the Falcons, you can hate it then.
Exactly. And I don't like Taysom, but we won't get into that. The LVP for the Saints would probably be Michael Thomas, Crybaby Thomas, as everyone likes to call him.
Yep.
And though he was injured, when he was there, he was ineffective. 0 catches in the playoff game. And then, obviously, he was even a distraction for the team, fighting, fellow players. So
yeah, we talked about it last week as one of the guys that was a mega disappointment from the season, kind of carrying off of Chris McCaffrey. One of your best players ends up getting injured. It seems like the Saints still ended up finishing out pretty good, but Michael Thomas is now going to have to get on track with a new quarterback, which is going to be the offseason question. Is it going to be Jameis? Is it going to be Taysom as a starting quarterback?
Or is it going to be secret option number 3?
Yeah, so for Michael Thomas, it would benefit to have a guy like Jameis, who's going to be throwing the ball a lot, compared to Taysom, who's going to be your tight end
throwing the ball 4 yards. Well, actually, that might work for Michael Thomas when he runs those 4-yard slants.
Very true.
But that's kind of, like you were saying, Andrew, the off-season question is going to be their quarterback situation. Breeze hanging it up. I don't think he's officially announced it, but he's unofficially officially announced it. It's even when he was in there, he was still wasn't Breeze from like 3 or 4 years ago. Even then he was decent, but he just hasn't looked great. And now it's going to be between Jameis, who
30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions.
But in his little like show of work with the Saints,
little razzle dazzle in the playoff game.
That was kind of cool. And maybe they should have kept Jameson. The momentum, pull a little Alabama on the Bucks. So all signs are pointing towards Jameis as the starter. Right now,
Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill. Like, why else would he sign him to such a big deal when he's 28 years old? But that's definitely going to be their huge question: is who's going to be the next quarterback besides Drew Brees? And then the other question, we kind of foreshadowed it earlier with
is the cap hell.
Yeah, how are they going to get over the cap?
Hell.
That's what we've been playing on this site. It's over the cap, and it's a pretty fun site if you guys want to kind of
mess around with different scenarios.
Yeah, but you can literally go to each team and kind of cut players, trade players, restructure their deals to try and fix their cap situations, and you literally have to cut I was playing with it last night, Stein. You have to cut like 12 to 15 players on the Saints just to get them under the cap situation, and that's without trying to get back some free agents that they want.
You know, and the 12, 15 players, there's probably like 6 or 7 like good guys on that team.
Yeah, it's like Ryan Ramczyk, a couple different guys on their offensive line.
Marcus Davenport, you know.
There's quite a number of players that...
Cam Jordan, that's the big one.
And now moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A-plus rating, Super Bowl champions. Even with being the wild card team going in, being able to be the Super Bowl champs, A-plus grade I think is pretty acceptable. You may give them an A if you want to be a really hard ass of a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't world beaters throughout the season and got exposed in a few games, but they did win the World Series. Did win the Super Bowl.
We're in baseball
mode. I know,
mode.
We are getting in baseball mode. Did win the did win the Super Bowl.
Take 3, third time
in Tampa. Obviously, MVP Tom Brady, guy who a lot of people are writing off to be, you know, in the twilight of his career. Obviously, old people move to Florida to retire, and Brady moves to Florida to win another championship. And LVP, the haters, you know, the Brady haters. I hate to say it, but I'm in the LVP. I'm an LVP because I.
Don't take that, buddy.
Yeah, I'll take it.
That L.
I'll take it. You know, we're all saying Brady's done. You know, this is just going to be his twilight of his career, but he's winning again, and it just and even almost kills the idea that him being a system quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I don't know if you saw with Max Kellerman. When he first turned like 40 years old, I remember watching this live. He had this big take about like how quarterbacks, once they turn 40, like they end up digressing and everything. And he said the same thing about Brady, and they showed like Brady's stats ever since he said that. I'm pretty sure he's won 2 of his Super Bowls, the one against the Rams and then this past
one. The man isn't human, but I mean it's such a tired talking point that we're just gonna move on to the NFC East, or the NFC Beast, as people like to call it.
Before we move on, the one off-season question I will have for the Bucs is how much of the band will they bring back together? They've got Shaquille Barrett, Levante David, Gronk, Ndamukong Suh, AB, Playoff Lenny, and Chris Godwin are all free agents this upcoming offseason. And so how many of those guys are they going to end up bringing back? How many of them are going to be effective if they do bring them back?
Yeah.
They do need to stay under the cap situation. So
it's funny because, like, 4 of those names are guys who were like 5 years ago would have been like, what? They're all on the same team?
Well, that's what they talked about when bringing all those guys together. It's like this team and like Madden 16 would just be absolute god squad. So, All right, now let's move on to the NFC East, the NFC Beast. Yes, and we'll start off with the team that won the division, the Washington Football Team.
So, Washington Football Team, B+. Very surprising team, Andrew. Very surprising team. Obviously, last week, our pick for one of the most surprising teams, one of the best front four in football on their defensive line. They have, but I would say their offense is still much to be desired. Yeah, still leaves a lot to be desired. MVP for them, Chase Young, wins Defensive Rookie of the Year, looking like a legitimate, kind of that new Von Miller,
J.J. Watt type
J.J.
of
Watt,
just
Garrett,
Aaron Donald.
Yeah, Garrett kind of player in his first season. And then their least valuable player was the beginning of the season with Dwayne Haskins.
I would say, yeah, you know you're an LVP if you're not on the team anymore by the end of the season when we're giving our off-season or end-of-season grades.
He could have started a playoff game, which is hilarious, and just the strip club, just the off-field antics. He loses his captainship in like a week or something.
And then when he was out there on the field starting, just wasn't very effective and led to him being cut by the Washington Football Team.
A quick story about last year when he was might have been 2 years ago, when he was a rookie. One of the tall tale signs that you knew he was going to be kind of a me first guy was in his first start. One of his first starts, the Redskins were winning, and they were going into victory formation, and he was actually on the sideline walking around taking selfies with fans when they were needing him to do the kneel down. So they had, I think it was probably Case Keenum or something at the time,
the backup quarterback,
do the kneel downs, and because they couldn't, he wasn't there. So that's just kind of a good.
It's like looking at that in hindsight now. It's like that should have been a bad omen for what was
or
to come.
A sign of what it was. Speaking of bad omens, the next team, the Eagles, a C, I guess.
I would say
maybe a C minus.
We talked about them last week. That was my most disappointing team. Yeah, I'd put them C minus, maybe D plus type of team.
Yeah, 4-11, last place in division, and I mean it was just injuries that hampered them and just a mismanagement of assets with Wentz.
I was gonna say we talked about how bad the offensive line was. You got them down. You got the whole offense down as the LVP. I'd say specifically the offensive line, just with giving up all the sacks that Wentz took, and their big offseason question. I mentioned it already. Is it time to blow it up? I think it is. Full rebuild mode. You have the new coaching staff there. Jalen Hurts most likely going to take over the reins at quarterback. You could draft another quarterback.
I think it's time to get rid of all the guys. The Johnsons, the Kelseys, all those guys.
You talk. They were in cap hell. All the old veterans that they have
that won them that helped lead them to the Super Bowl. I think it's time to cut ties and just fresh slate. Especially because it's just been the same old song and dance with them. They still don't have any receivers, even though they had 2 off seasons to address that issue.
Yeah, they end up drafting a quarterback in the second round. So there's a lot of problems on this team that need to get solved, and I think the rebuild is probably the only solution to it.
Yeah.
Moving on to the New York Football Giants.
C+, 6-10. Tied second in the division. That's just with a 6-10 record. The Giants they're like one of the most mediocre teams, kind of on the lower end of the mediocrity.
It's like they got some good players. Saquon going down with a torn ACL kind of put their season at the end in week 2.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Judge there's no questions about Judge, which is nice because, like a lot of times with teams like this, it's like the coach is the first thing to blame. Well, I don't think they're blaming Judge,
Yeah, probably really the only thing is just his unorthodox kind of training stuff. With you hear all sorts of stories about him with the practices and everything, but it seems like he could be a long-term solution for this football team.
Defense was decent too, but the offense is just still anemic. And I would say next year is the year of Daniel Jones, if his prove it year, if he really takes that next level, because he wasn't terrible this year, but he was just very middle of the he's like the Giants, he's middle of the pack. It's not lower middle.
Once again, he kind of had his glimpses of success, and then he had his really bad game. His season is pretty much summed up by that big run that he had where he ends up tripping inside the 10-yard line, all the upside with the long 80-yard run, and then just falling just short at the 5-yard line.
So this is his last year to really show if he can be the guy. If he's not, then just another wasted quarterback pick.
That's what you got the LVP down as the receiving core.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into the offseason question is, can they get their next OBJ? They've got the 11 pick in the draft. I mentioned that there's a lot of big-name free agent wide receivers.
Yeah.
Can they get one of those guys? You got Kenny Golladay, Will Fuller, Corey Davis, another kind of second tier type guy. Chris Godwin we mentioned before for the Bucks.
Yeah.
So there's a number of guys that they could go after in terms of wide receivers.
At the beginning of the season, you still have Golden Tate on your team, and Evan Ingram had a couple drops. Just not looking good. The receiving core just needs to improve because the running back. It's Saquon. He's a good player, and I'm sure an ACL injury. Really, it's not as bad. It's not as death sentence as it used to be in the NFL, and I think he'll be back. They're gonna have to fix that turf at MetLife.
all the injuries. They talk about that San Francisco game where they had all the guys go down.
That was the Injury Bowl, and then the moving on, the last team in the NFC East, the Cowboys, just another kind of like the Eagles, another C. Losing Dak was a big blow to them. I would say that the old, run first Cowboys are pretty much dead.
If they can fix that offensive line, that's the biggest thing, is that they had all that money committed to the offensive line. It's now those guys are starting to become free agents. They're veteran guys getting up there in age, so they're either going to need to draft more of those offensive linemen or spend them on some free agents, because Zeke is still he's not the running back that he used to be. I think he's lost a step. A lot of Cowboys fans have noticed that he's lost a step.
Yeah.
So
he's lost a ball or two.
Yeah. So if they can figure out, get another guy or two on that offensive line just to shore it up for Zeke, then I think that they'll still be okay on the offensive line. But I think they are kind of transforming like the Seahawks did, transforming from the run first to a pass first. And that could be just because of Dak and the receivers that they
when you
have.
Ben DiNucci throwing it over 30 times in a game, that's not a recipe for success.
But when Dak is healthy, you've got CeeDee Lamb, you've got Amari Cooper, you got Michael Gallup.
That was the MVP is their receiving core, I said, was, CeeDee Lamb is kind of emerging. Amari Cooper is still doing Amari Cooper things, and Michael Gallup is, a great another receiver. So their receiving core is great too.
Yeah. And that's what the offseason question is, will they finally lock down Dak? And I think this is finally the offseason where they don't throw the franchise tag at him. They finally give him his deal. And if you're on Dak's side of things, Stein, you have that dislocated ankle that you had in the game. Wouldn't you want that long-term kind of security after having an injury like that? It's like you have one more of those, like it could be a career ender. So
exactly.
Dak, the big disagreement has been in the money wise. He wants the $40 million contract. The Cowboys would rather give him closer to $35 million. I think this could be the offseason where Dak just wants a 4 or 5 year deal, and Jerry Jones ends up giving it to him.
The crazy thing is, I heard on the radio the other day that Jerry was even cited as saying Dak has all the leverage, in this deal. And the fact an owner is able to say that a guy has all the leverage is hilarious, because usually, you want to be the guys with the big balls, you want to, as the owner and the management, you guys want to have the leverage, and you want the guy. The fact that Dak has all the leverage, because we saw how bad they were without him. So, the ball's is in the Cowboys' court to figure, to offer him what they need to. Will this blow up in their face? Potentially, which would be hilarious, because everyone wants to see the Cowboys blow up.
Like I said, it just makes sense on both sides, because Dak wanting that security after having the injury from this past season, and then, like you said, the Cowboys with just how bad they were with Andy Dalton, Ben DiNucci, etc. at quarterback. Kellen Moore honestly should have suited up for the games that Ben DiNucci was playing.
I still think he could play quarterback a bit sometime.
Hey, Boise State, great.
I know. All-time leading, I don't know if he still holds it now, but was at one time the all-time most wins for a quarterback in college football history. So
yeah, I think he does still hold that, Stein, if I'm not mistaken. So.
I'll have to look it up after the show. But move to the NFC North. Always a bitter, cold, battle for this division, Andrew. And this year was kind of the same story from years, where it's Packers, Bears, Vikings, and then bringing up the rear, the pace car, the Lions. Let's start off though with the Bears. A B-. I don't know if I gave him a B- because it's Bears. I just saw the B and I was thinking of that.
But I mean, it's shocking to think they did make the playoffs this season.
They did.
It was an 8-8 team.
Nickelodeon game.
It seemed like they didn't, just with how bad that they played this year, that they didn't make the playoffs. But they had the great start to the season. What were they, 5-1 or whatever? 5-1, 6-1.
Beat the Falcons when they were losing. One of the another string in the Falcons blown loss belt. But probably one of the worst offenses in football.
Yeah, David Montgomery was a lone bright spot. He was a guy that a lot of questions, just a 3 yards per carry type running back, but he really stepped it up this year, having some great runs and just a great overall season for this Bears team.
Yeah.
And the Bears are another team. Mitch, like a lot of other quarterbacks we've talked about so far, the big question is do they re-sign Mitch? He's a free agent. Do they draft a quarterback?
I'm going to stop you right there. You need to refer him as MVP Mitch Trubisky.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The Nickelodeon
most valuable player. Okay, he did win that award, even though everyone was on Twitter.
We'll start giving Mitch the respect that he deserves, Mr. MVP.
That was, oh gosh, and I hope Nickelodeon gets another game and they in the future, and they talk about previous MVP winners.
The first ever MVP award winner.
First ever MVP Mitch Trubisky, which is definitely
no one else has an MVP in the league.
That's true. It's gonna be funny what they do at quarterback. Yeah. What's their draft position?
They
gotta be like middle-ish.
They're 20 because they made the playoffs.
Yeah, I know. So they're right at the middle. So they're not in the quarterback sweet spot. Oh gosh, it's gonna be hard for them. Their defense though was great again, and
they really don't have a lot of picks. They got first, second, third, fifth, sixth,
they
and
have
a Falcons
pick?
They have a Falcons seventh. The Falcons don't have a seventh.
What
But
trade was that?
who knows? But
I'm gonna think about that trade.
They don't really have a lot of draft capital to be able to throw stuff around. Allen Robinson's a free agent this offseason, so they could be losing their wide receiver one. The Bears have quite a number of questions that they need answered.
To the Bears?
I said they'd have to give up a lot of. They probably end up giving up 3 firsts for Deshaun. They give up their first this year. They give up a first next year and a first in 2022.
And then they somehow sign one of these free agent receivers. I'm starting to formulate something, Roach.
I don't think they're in the best cap situation.
I think they're middle.
Yeah,
cap-ish.
right now they're at.
Are they in the red or are they in the black?
They're in the red by $2.5 million.
Well, they could probably cut somebody on defense, save them some money. Let's move on though to the Packers. A-, number 1 seed in the NFC, 13-3, a great regular season.
It's a team that it could have gotten an A probably if they didn't end up losing that NFC title.
They also
game.
did have a lot of close games they should have won probably by more, and that's why they got only an A-. MVP, Aaron Rodgers.
The MVP of the season.
MVP, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, how are you not going to give it to him? They were a force, like an unstoppable force. But they just ran into a better team in the Bucs and a hotter team in the Bucs.
And it's another thing that we talked about where Aaron Rodgers and the Packers just trying to get over that hump of the NFC title game. Besides winning the Super Bowl, just hasn't been able to do it this past season. The season against the Falcons back in 2016, that's been the big
faux pas for them.
Yeah. So.
And then I said the LVP was that playoff game. The NFC championship game, where they had 3 straight turnovers from Brady and couldn't score. Like, that's just... It's hard.
I was going to say,
it's hard.
That's never going to happen where you're going to get 3 turnovers from Tom Brady and to not be able to capitalize on those.
You're gifted. You're gift-wrapped. And they just couldn't do it. So, I mean, that's just failure to execute is their least valuable player. Their biggest offseason question is they're losing Aaron Jones and
Jamal
Williams to free agency.
So will they re-sign them? Another team, like I said, they're right in front of the Falcons in terms of their cap situation.
Yeah, no team should resign a running back. So unless they're transcendent, which I know you like Aaron Jones, Roach, but I don't think he's a transcendent running back.
I mean, they really like A.J. Dillon, and A.J. Dillon was decent in some of the games where Aaron Jones was down, Jamal Williams wasn't playing. So I think it might be time for A.J. Dillon in Green Bay. I just don't see them, with the cap situation they're in, re-signing Aaron Jones. Like you said, I don't think he's enough of a difference maker with what he's probably going to be a $15 million a year running back over the next 3 or 4 years, the contract he wants.
That they are a dime a dozen, and I hate to say it because it's one of the best fantasy positions. Everyone loves a good running back, but when you get to 26, 27, you're on your decline. And it sucks because there's guys who, Todd Gurley, who you don't want to see on their decline, but they are.
Well, and think about it also is that the league is turning from this 3 yards in a cloud of dust to this pass-heavy league where it's pretty much the norm to have a 4,000-yard passer as your quarterback.
Yeah.
So the focal point is definitely not on the running back in terms of the offense anymore.
The guy who will lead the league in rushing yards is only about 1,000-something rushing yards.
You have Derrick Henry and then pretty much the field after that.
Yeah.
Besides this other guy for this team that we're going into, the Minnesota Vikings, and Dalvin Cook.
A C. I would say they're just mediocre too. Dalvin Cook, though, just was a beast this year.
Yeah, he was expected to be a great running back, but really took a step probably with Saquon and McCaffrey injured. I'd say behind Henry was
the second best running back.
It's between him, Kamara, and Henry were the top 3 running backs in the league this past season.
Yeah.
So between him taking that next step, Justin Jefferson filling in for Stephon Diggs, having that great rookie season.
Yeah,
they have the pieces there. But their big question is, can you win with Kirk Cousins? Because 2 years, $66 million left on his deal. You're probably not going to be able to move that. But he's just been he's been Kirk Cousins. He's been mediocre. Like, there's really nothing else to say about Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, he's probably going to be the quarterback there for a little bit longer, but
like I said, you're not going to be able to trade that. You're probably not going to cut it because there's going to be so much dead cap space that you're going to have to take on.
Everyone's eating dead cap these days. It's like, what's for breakfast? Dead cap. Kirk Cousins, he was. I mean, he's all right. He's a very lukewarm quarterback.
Dude, why is it just about every quarterback we've talked about? It's like, they're all right. Like,
yeah, it's like they have flashes of brilliance, and then they just have a game where they throw 3 or 4 picks and throw maybe 200 yards, and it's like.
This is another team that's in a bad cap situation. Their defense is nothing
and their defense was, you think a team in a bad cap situation would have a decent defense, but like the Falcons, they don't,
Yeah, I mean, they have an okay defense. Like, they're not bad, but they're not great.
Yeah.
The games that they won was usually on their offense. So this is kind of a team that they're like their record described. They're a 7-9 team. They're a mediocre team.
They're 7-9 team, and I think their ceiling it would have been 9-7.
Yeah, so they're a team that might make a wild card next season.
Yeah. Lions, I gave them a C-. I might have been generous.
Yeah, I know you didn't give anyone below C-. You were kind of being a little generous.
Yeah, I wasn't.
They're kind of like the Eagles, where it's like a C-, D+
Well,
type
really,
range.
in the NFC, there wasn't an F team. I'm not going to say there won't be an F team in the AFC.
Jaguars, Jets.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking Jets. I wasn't even thinking the Jags, which is funny. But the Lions, C-, and it's just going to be a complete turnover of everything. New coaching staff.
New GM as
new
well.
New GM, new quarterback.
Yeah, Jared Goff there. The offseason question for me is just how bad are they going to be next season? I think this is probably the leading candidate for the worst team in the NFL next season.
Yeah, one of them. If one of them, maybe the Eagles. Probably worst team. One of the worst teams in the NFC. MVP, I even put I was like, could you really have one? I mean, Stafford was good, but he's not on the team.
He's not on the team anymore. Kenny Galladay's a free agent. Marvin Jones is a free agent. They're losing pretty much their whole receiving core. DeAndre Swift is a guy that you could say for the MVP for them this season.
Yeah, and for the LVP, I actually put Jeff Okudah, a guy who they drafted 3rd overall, to come in there and be that big game Slay replacement. Just was awful. Like a guy you use a 3rd pick on shouldn't be that bad.
I was gonna say I think he was injured quite a bit this season, missed some games, and then when he was playing, he was pretty inefficient. So they're hoping that he makes a step up next season. But besides Swift, besides Okudah, Jared Goff is your quarterback now. There's not a whole lot of big names on this Lions team, and like I said, this could be a team that's going to be battling for probably worst team in the league next season.
Yeah, I'm just imagining. It's sad, but really is going to be bad.
It's prototypical Lions, honestly. Like we haven't seen very good Lions teams in our lifetime. So let's move on to the final division, the NFC West, probably the most competitive division out of these 4 that we've been talking about. Yep. And let's start off with the Arizona Cardinals, 8-8 this past season.
Another surprising team took a good step in the right direction. Kyler definitely took that next step, but still more steps to go. Mm-hmm. It's always about taking the next step. Still more steps to go. They just barely missed the playoffs.
They lost in terms of tiebreaker because
lost on the last day.
The Bears were 8-8, made the playoffs, so Cardinals were that team just on the outside looking in. MVP of the season, their newest addition with DeAndre Hopkins, a great connection between Kyler and D-Hop, just shows what Kyler can do when he's got a wide receiver 1 there.
Yeah.
And then the LVP, you have the secondary.
I love Pat Pete, but the clock's kind of going out on them, and a lot of mock drafts have them taking the best cornerback available.
Yeah, that's what Patrick Peterson, a free agent this offseason, so that's going to be one of the things they're going to have to think about whether or not they want to re-sign him. And just the offseason question is pretty general. It's like what moves will they be able to make this offseason where they can make the playoffs?
Yeah.
In such a competitive division where you have 3 teams that are 500 or better from this past season. The 49ers, a team that, if they didn't have the injuries that they had, were probably a 500 team as well. So you got to find a way to make a difference in a tough division. So what moves can they make to end up making that difference?
Yeah. Seahawks, A-. I would say their thing is wasted potential going to the playoffs. Kind of a team that I would say at the beginning of the season I was really hyped on as like the best team in the NFL.
Everyone was. I mean, you heard all the Russ MVP, the let Russ cook. They were finally passing the ball. The team we talked about earlier.
Lockett and Metcalf were trading off games from like who could catch for 200 yards.
Exactly. They had the two great receivers. The defense was still great. Not the defense that they had in the past, but they had a decent defense.
Beginning of the season was bad, but then kind of got better.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it's funny because the offense started off good, the defense started off bad. You know how imagine a graph, and they kind of met in the middle at one point, maybe around like week 8, where it's like, all right, this is gonna be a good team, and then the defense kind of took off, where the offense kind of slowed down. Mm-hmm. So they just couldn't get that together. MVP, I say, was DK Metcalf. He's really starting to look like maybe a top 5 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, you're talking about a guy that when he got drafted that everyone was questioning. It's like, oh, he's just a vertical guy.
Yeah, he can run fast, but he can run fast in a straight line.
Yeah, because he's such a big guy, but he's really shown a complete route tree that he's able to run and just becoming a more complete receiver and really becoming
number 1 receiver.
Yeah,
obviously.
And he's becoming that number 1 option for Russell Wilson. The LVP offensive line, just in recent interviews with Russell Wilson recently, just talking about how he's been sacked so much. The offensive line's kind of been a problem the past couple years with Seattle, trying to fix it up, protect that franchise quarterback. Yeah. And the offseason question kind of relates to that. It's like, can they keep Russ happy? Fix that offensive line, get him sacked less.
You're screwing up if Russell Wilson, a guy who's notorious for zero character issues or anything like that, being unhappy.
Yeah. That's you're definitely right about that, Stein. So it's like, what moves can they make to make him happy? It seems like you got the receivers. They've got a decent running back with Chris Carson. I think he's supposed to be a free agent this offseason.
I've even heard grumblings of maybe Carroll. Maybe it's time to get rid of Carroll.
I mean,
I feel like if they have a bad season this year, if they have if they underachieve like they could this year, then it's Carroll's going to be shown the door.
Yeah, and it's something where they could, even if they're like a 9-7 team, get out in the first round of the playoffs once again. Then it could definitely. This is
such a "what have you done for me lately" kind of league. That Carroll could be gone.
Yeah, the team they ended up losing to in the playoffs, the Los Angeles Rams, who we'll talk about next. You gave them a B+, so right there with the Seahawks, which makes sense.
Yeah, just a great defense, which is kind of funny because I really didn't think of them the entire year as like an amazing defense, but you look at the numbers and they really were.
Well, that's what you thought. It's like, all right, they got Aaron Donald, they got Jalen Ramsey, so 2 of the best guys at their respective positions, but it's like, oh, they really don't have anyone else besides that. But I mean, they do have some difference makers on that defense, and it was a very complete team. Jared Goff at quarterback was really the one spot that glaring need that they needed to fix, and they did that with getting Matthew Stafford now, and so a lot of teams are picking them to be a Super Bowl contender next season.
I'd say I like to say they're selling their souls right now to try to their window.
They've got like a 2-year window right now.
Exactly.
Before guys start
whatever Kool-Aid the Padres are drinking, the Rams are drinking. Where they have like no first round picks for like X amount of years.
They haven't had one since Jared Goff they drafted Jared Goff at number 1.
So they are really
back in 2016 or 2017.
They are really selling their souls and going all out because as soon as Donald declines, I think it's over.
Yeah, they have Donald and Ramsey both locked down until like 2025, 2026 , but Donald could be into his early 30s by the time that contract is up.
I don't think they're done. I still think they might make a splash to get a receiver or something. A really a great receiver, a receiver 1 or 2. How's their cap space looking?
That's what I'd say. The one thing that they might want to fix is just the offensive line, just shoring up Matthew Stafford. Cam Akers will be the running back 1 next season. So they are not good in terms of cap. They're $34 million in the hole.
They're third worst.
Yeah, they're third worst right now in the league. So I'm sure they'll make some moves.
They'll probably shed some veteran contracts.
Yeah, I'd say one place where they would need to shore up is the offensive line. That's kind of been something. Those guys have been aging. They have not been the best for them. So if they want to be that Super Bowl contender, a lot of people are expecting them to be, maybe shore that up
Yeah.
Like you said, they don't have draft picks, so it'd be something that maybe they can find a diamond in the rough with a late draft pick.
It's gonna be hard, and maybe they even make some more trades because I feel like if they're at a table at Vegas right now, Roach, they have all their chips and they're pushing them all into the center.
Yeah, you're exactly right on that, Stein. And let's talk about the last team, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. We talked about how, real quick before we go back to the Rams, they have 3 draft picks. They have a 2nd rounder, a 6th, and a 7th rounder. So has them getting an edge rusher right now in a projected draft pick right now. But yeah, so 3 draft picks, so they're going to need to make the most of those 3.
Their first pick is 57.
Yeah, that's you selling their souls is pretty much right, Stein.
Yeah, and it's not even like they have an early 2nd round pick. It's like later 2nd round pick. Like if you're a Rams fan, just don't watch the draft until like day 2 at like 3:00.
But yeah, moving on to the San Francisco 49ers. We mentioned 6-10, last in the division, a C+ rating, but that you can really account that on all the injuries that they had.
I wrote as a comment on this, does this team ever stay healthy?
Yeah, it seems like they've just had so many injuries the past couple seasons. Just Jimmy G, you thought was going to be the franchise quarterback, hasn't been able to stay healthy.
I was looking at their stats on their page, on their Pro Football Reference, which is like where we get all our stats and stuff, Roach. And when I was looking at their depth chart, like the receiving core said, oh. So,
just everyone was out. Yeah, Deebo Samuel was battling injuries all season. Ayuk was in and out of the lineup. George Kittle had all the injuries this season. So
yeah, I said their MVP though was on their defense and Fred Warner. This guy literally was a Pro Bowler doing everything, but that was their only Pro Bowler on a decent defense too.
I was gonna say you could say Robert Saleh, but not on the team anymore. So it's like your MVP. Well, obviously he was good enough to get a head coaching job with the New York Jets. So
and then their LVP, I said, is their trainer, their training staff.
Yeah, might want to get a new trainer or try and fix some of those injuries problems that you had.
I mean, I'm sure like their staff is really good, but it just seems like the injury bug. It's them in Philly every single year.
It's kind of like the Mets in baseball, where it's like there's just some teams that just can never stay healthy, and the 49ers are kind of turning into that team.
Yeah, you know what's funny though? It's like those teams that can never stay healthy have like a good year every once in a while, and then there's teams that always stay healthy, but you never have good years, like the Jags, and it's like
you stay healthy, but you don't have the quality
the Jags
players.
Are losing every single one of their players, like it's funny, but. Their big off-season question, again with the quarterback carousel, is Jimmy G the answer? Is Jimmy G the guy?
Yeah, there's been mentions of the 49ers wanting to trade for a quarterback. Jimmy G's got 2 years, $48 million left on his deal, so that's going to be kind of a bigger contract for them to move. So I think they personally are going to have to stick with Jimmy G. I don't think any team's going to want to trade for him, and you're pretty much going to need to include Jimmy G in any sort of deal that you trade for a quarterback.
Matt Ryan to Shanahan?
I mean, could have. It's two big contracts. I don't know why the 49ers would want to trade a similar contract for a guy that's 12 years older.
That was just a random idea I just thought of. But I don't, because wasn't another landing spot for Deshaun? They said maybe the Niners.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's been talks.
It's Niners, like Jets.
Pretty much any of these teams that need a quarterback they've been talking about. It's like, we'll get Deshaun Watson. Let's get the best quarterback that's available.
Yeah.
Even though it's going to cost you 3 first-round draft picks.
Yeah, it's going to cost you. I mean, why don't the Rams go get Deshaun Watson?
Yeah,
they're selling everything.
Like I said, as you notice for the theme for a lot of these report cards, the offseason question is the quarterback situation for a lot of these teams. Yeah. What are they going to do with their quarterback? Are they going to draft a quarterback?
I think in a few weeks we're going to have a quarterback show where we talk about every single team and we talk about like their quarterback situation.
Yeah, maybe do like some predictions on like where the quarterback's gonna.
Yeah, we'll give but that's like that'll be in the future. That's kind of the end of our report card, guys. Next week we will be doing the AFC team report cards.
Yeah, so it'll be a very similar kind of setup to this show. We'll have our opening kickoff, any of the news.
Yeah, there probably there's always going to be news.
I would say maybe another quarterback will end up getting traded or something that we'll have news on for next week in our opening kickoff, and then we'll get into the AFC report card. Very similar setup show to this past week, and then later on down the road we'll start talking about.
Yeah, we'll do a quarterback show. We'll probably getting into pre-draft, talking about team needs, And then, even further down the road, we'll be doing debates and other things like that. So.
And then we'll start getting into draft time.
And contest and some fun contests. And we have some, bets and stuff that we want to do. And we got some punishments that we're going to think of.
Yeah,
a cool idea we might do is we might buy all those weird flavored sodas on Amazon, and loser has to drink them.
Yeah, that's one of the many punishments that we got set up.
I'm cringy thinking about that.
You're just got the taste in the back of your throat of it already.
The ranch or the buffalo wing soda. And I love buffalo wings and I love ranch, but put them in a soda form.
Just doesn't seem like the ideal combination for you.
No, sir.
But anyways, guys, that's gonna wrap up episode 3 for us. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Be sure to go on Instagram, follow our Instagram page at The Couch Quarterbacks. We'll always have updates on there on when we're releasing our new shows. And just all sorts of funny memes. Stein's been grinding on the Instagram story, posting some funny memes.
Yeah, you guys will like them.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the Instagram page, and we thank you guys for tuning in. Tune in next Saturday when this will be coming out, and we'll have our episode 4. We'll see you guys on the flip side.
Bye-bye.